Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mortgage Pro Talk. This is Deep Dive, where every week I dive deep with mortgage professionals and leaders discussing their journey to where they are now and what they've learned along the way. My name is Dan Cooley, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Josh Teti, who is the Senior Account Executive at Princeton Wholesale. Josh, how are you doing today, man?
Dan, I am doing fantastic, man. Thanks so much for the lovely introduction.
Of course. I'm excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on since we started rolling with this, and it's like far too long. I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, it just
How,
gives me an opportunity to live in my dream world of being on podcasts every single day. So,
is
I,
that your dream? If you could go do anything, you'd be like doing podcasts.
you know what, man? Ever since I started watching Pat McAfee and kind of what he's doing with his
Yep.
with his boys, which he's from Pittsburgh, so I think there's a little connection there. But I always think to myself like, man, that would be cool just to do that every single day. Talk about something you love. Obviously, they're doing sports, and yeah, so this is giving me a little insight into that world. So I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Well, we'll have to start our own feed. We'll have to do one. I don't know. We'll
Exactly.
have to talk about it. We'll figure it out. Maybe it
There
could
you
be
go.
a wholesale channel. That'd be
I
cool.
like it. I like it.
I think podcasts for me are like, I just love that it's become so big, and I also love that something about like my whole life I just remember hearing like not even like it's gonna like done deal, video killed radio, like, so that's what
Hmm.
happened. It's already done. It's too late. Radio's dead, and video's here. And man, not true, not correct. So it's very
Yeah,
cool.
I think one of the big reasons why people have any hesitation with podcasts, it's always like, well, people don't care about what I'm saying and what I'm thinking. And it's actually the exact opposite. I'm very interested in what other people's perspectives are. So I think a forum like this, it's a little less formal, right? A little more casual, and
Mm.
you're just sharing your thoughts. I think that's a great way to get inside someone's head and actually get different perspectives, which helps us all grow. So that's why I like it, and that's why I think it's gotten so popular.
Well said. I think you're totally right. I'm a big believer in so my background is in the arts, namely acting and directing, and I really am a big believer in like you just put your authentic voice out there, and there will be people drawn to it. It's like the same advice you'd give to a kid that was afraid about making friends in school, right? It's
Exactly.
like you're not going to get everyone to like you, so like get that out of your head. Everyone's not going to like you. Find your people, and you're set.
Yeah,
Um,
just be yourself, right? It seems so simple when you say that, right? Don't try and cater to other people because you're worried about what they think about you. Just be yourself. And it's funny, people are so nervous. They're like, oh, this person's not gonna like me, or they're not gonna like if I said this. You'd be surprised. Like, people actually don't care as much as you think they care. Like,
yeah.
and like people. So let's say you're on video or you're in a podcast and you mess up, or you have to take two or whatever it is, and everyone's so nervous. Oh, someone's gonna think I'm terrible at this. People actually don't think that, right? They like seeing the human side of people. So, yes, I think that's a big reason why this forum, and even like vlogging or something like that.
Mm.
I think is just so unique because you actually get to see real people, right? As long as they're being themselves.
I totally agree with you. And in terms of not being afraid to mess up or stumble or whatever, I honestly think one of the best things that ever happened to me was like blanking on stage, or or being part of a moment where a line was dropped. Like,
Sure,
it's not something everyone got to experience, and it's horrible, and it's like it's
I can't
your
imagine, man.
stomach clenches, your heart starts pounding, but you know, it's like anything else. If you live through something, it becomes less scary, right? I
Sure.
mean, obviously, I'm sure we could brainstorm, exceptions to that rule,
Sure.
but I just think that once you live through something, you can live through it. So yeah, but I understand some people public speaking and just it's their worst fear, and I was born with some kind of weird disease that makes me not afraid to speak in front of people. So I don't know
I,
what it is.
I mean, good for you. Yeah, I'm the same way too. I actually took a public speaking course in college, and it was an elective. Like, I didn't have to take it, but I chose to take it. And everyone's like, "Why are you doing that? That's crazy." Like, I hate public speaking, and I never. I can understand why people are afraid of it, but to me, it never was a question. I don't mind getting up in front of a group, giving speeches. Sometimes, my fiance Alexa always says that I'm very long-winded. So like, if I'm giving speeches, I like to get into it. And, I gave a best man speech a couple years ago, and she was like, oh, it was fantastic, but like, it was pretty long. But, yeah, I have no problem doing that. Yeah, it's awesome.
It sounds like Alexa and my wife Becky would have a lot to talk about, a lot to connect on. Just
We probably should have let them connect. We probably
yeah,
should.
probably not. It'd be bad. It'd be bad. If we're ever in a situation, look, I know you two don't know each other. That can be awkward. We both are long-winded. Go.
Yeah.
Talk.
Right.
And we just, come back, bottle of wine's open. They're laughing. We're like, oh no.
We're like, uh-oh.
So you said it already, but I'll ask the question. Where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in the good old Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And,
Yeah.
and so within the city, outside the city, where?
So a little town, probably like 30 minutes southeast, a little town called Elizabeth, PA. Even a smaller town within Elizabeth called Green Oak. Shout out to all my Green Oak people that are listening. Probably not a lot of them, but yeah. And it was just your everyday. We were considered being kind of out in the farmland, which is interesting because like where I grew up was just a nice plan of homes. But if you drove like 10 minutes, like my high school was actually right next to a farmland. So we always
cool.
got the rep of being like the, people from the farm and things like that. But, no, it was a great time growing up. Obviously, I stayed within the same district and school district and things like that, from elementary to middle school to elementary school, which, gave me the opportunity to really develop lifelong friendships. And when I mean lifelong friendships, I really do mean it. I mean, I still have 7 or 8 like super, super close friends that I talk to every single day that I grew up with from kindergarten all the way through high school, which I know is very unique, right? It doesn't happen a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. But, growing up in a town like that gave us the ability to stay connected, and we all stayed true. And even though people live in different states and went to different colleges and are doing different things, we all stay connected. And I think that's really, really special.
I think that's very cool, and I commend you also on like the self-awareness of knowing that was important. I think that, so we moved a ton when I was growing up, so it was not that, unfortunately, but what I did have was, I come from a very big Irish family, and so my cousins were sort of that. So I actually think there's something confidence boosting to knowing that there's a group of people that sort of have your back no matter what at the end of the day. And I think that's maybe something that's hard for some people. If someone hasn't experienced it, there's something there that I think is very cool and special.
No, you're right. It is. I have found myself in conversations with people that haven't experienced that, and to me, it's just second nature. Like I grew up with all these people. We stay very close. I never knew anything else. But I can also appreciate the other perspective of like someone like you said, that have moved around a lot, moved from school district to school district, moved outside of the state or whatever it was. That's all they know, right? So they've only been around, kind of traveling around and making new friends and things like that. So, yeah, and that's why I said I consider myself very grateful, because I know a lot of people haven't had that opportunity to stay close. And I just, I've maybe not on purpose as much, but I've just been so surrounded by great people, people just like myself that have experienced different life-changing events and things like that. And we can all like confide in one another. And, I just think that that's what's kept us close over these however many years it's been. Right. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, tell me a little bit about, one question I always love to know the answer to is like, what's the first thing you remember really wanting to be when you grew up?
So I grew up playing sports. I was one of those kids that started, my dad was my coach type of situation. Right. So, I played t-ball, baseball. I played football, soccer, basketball, ran track. So I just kind of got into everything. But my love, the sport that I loved the most was soccer. So I really focused on that. I remember there being a time where like soccer and baseball were kind of in the same season. So I had to like pick a lane, right? Do I want to play baseball, or do I want to focus my time on soccer? And I chose soccer, and I was just naturally better at soccer, and I was, so it just made more sense. So, always growing up, watching professional soccer and being like, oh, I want to be one of those guys one day, right? I want to play professionally. That's how much I love the game. Obviously life happens, right? Because you're younger and you don't need to have a job, and you didn't go to college yet. So in my head, I was like, yeah, I want to be a professional soccer player. That's going to be my life, and it's going to be awesome. So that's the first memory. And I think it was always soccer,
Mm.
being a soccer player. Even as I did get older and entered middle school and high school, things like that, there were always there was a little bit of that dream that still is still stuck around in my head.
That's great. Yeah, and it's so hard. It's hard when, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that, right? On like, the dream when
Sure.
you're young and then
Yep.
having to refocus it. And I think the healthiest thing that I've noticed is being able to then take from the time you put, like, not seeing it as a waste, right? It's like you put in this time and effort into this love. You learned things, you grew because of it. I think a lot of times when that goes, when it becomes clear, like, all right, that's not going to be, like, I'm not going to be moving to England anytime soon and
Sure.
becoming part of the Premier League. Like, that's not my direction. I think some people see it as like, I've wasted all this time. It's like, no, like you learned something important. It's part of you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I attribute a lot of my personality, my strengths, the way I go about things in my career. I contribute a lot, or I give a lot to
Mm,
soccer, and being within that environment, through high school, middle school. I played in college. I'm still kind of playing even as an adult.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the no-brainer one is competition, right?
Mm,
I'm not this crazy over competitive guy, but when you're on a team, right? You work with the other teammates and you're just very competitive. You always want to win, right? So I remember one of my fondest memories is growing up. We had this tournament every year for our rec team where we would go for a weekend and play in the tournament. I mean, I vividly remember winning that tournament a few times,
awesome.
right? Because we won, right? We were competitive and we won, and those things stick out. Same thing in college. Like we had a lot of victories in college. We won our conference. We did all these things, and I vividly remember that because it's just competition. Like you're always competitive. You always want to be the best,
Mm,
right? You don't go in to play a sport, especially at like the collegiate level, just to like be okay at it, right? You always have this goal of competing and being the best and at the top. So that was obviously a no-brainer. And then just the whole teamwork aspect of
yeah.
it. I throughout my career, I was blessed to have been like a captain, right? So,
Mm,
in a sense of like you have captains in these other sports, it's someone that, isn't necessarily the overall leader of the team, but is someone that the teammate looks up to when maybe things are going sideways for direction and things like that. So just being in that environment and being able to like be a part of a team and then being able to be a captain of that team and help make certain decisions for the team. That's obviously translated into my leadership skills and my management skills,
mm.
which I've been able to have and hold positions throughout my career in the mortgage industry. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels, a lot of parallels. So yeah, I don't look at me not becoming a professional soccer player as a failure. Obviously reality hits you at some point, and you're like, wait a
Right.
second. I am good, but how good am I, and
Mm,
how much do I want to, put into this career? Because like when you get to college, you got to like go to certain colleges, you got to like compete at a certain level, and that takes a lot of dedication. It takes away from education and things like that. And to me, like I don't look at not taking that extra step to be a professional player as a failure at all, because like you said, I have been able to translate a lot of those skills and that experience to what I'm doing now, and I attribute a lot of my success to that for sure.
and I'll even add to that, like, from firsthand, having gotten to work with you and kind of see how you interact with team members and with people, around you. And I think those are, and when in any sport, when they're talking about drafting, right, those are those like, those not those what's the opposite, those intangibles, right,
Intangibles, yeah, yeah,
those
right,
things that are like, it's can they play the game? Yeah, well, obviously they wouldn't be at this point if they couldn't play the game, right? but
sure.
but are they, who are they, like, what type of person are they, how
Yeah,
do
it's
they.
stuff that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
And even if you're a fan of a team, you can really see it in real time. I'm currently wearing, I'm a big Sixers fan, right? And
nice.
love Joel Embiid, who plays for the Sixers. It's only this year that I'm starting to see any leadership, like real true, like, come on guys,
Sure,
come together,
sure.
it's it it's not something that people, it's not like, oh, hey, you're the best player on the team, so you're going to be the leader. Like it's not immediate. Right. And I think that, you see that in organizations also is like, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the person that has the leadership title that is the person that the other team members look to, for like little, like for a cue,
Sure.
like, you know
Sure.
what, guys, we're going to pull together. We're going to get through
Sure.
this.
And it's
So I think
amazing
that's
what
very
happens.
cool.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens too when you have a leader who's effective at getting people to rally around them, right? And whatever message they're delivering, like, to your point, let's say let's use soccer for an example, right? We're down 1-0 in the second half. We have to win this game. If you look at your leader, you look at your captain, and they're, killing themselves. They're out there grinding and they try and like get it. So like that's just very contagious to the rest of the team. And a lot of great things can happen that way. And I mean, even if you translate it to the mortgage industry, right? If you're having a slow month, right, as a team, or things are going wrong or things are going sideways, if you have a leader that realizes the moment and realizes that you have to like rally the people and get the people excited to get better, a lot of great things can happen. And I mean, we've seen it countless times. So there's a lot of awesome parallels to that. And another one too is people are, everyone says, oh, well, he was born with natural ability. He was born that way. That's not always true. Like people are born and sure, they might be born in a certain situation or born with more athletic ability, but you always have to work, right? You always have to work hard to make yourself better. And I had to do that as well, right? Growing up, I always pushed myself. I would always stay after practice and practice more. I would always come home and practice. And I just remember always thinking to myself, like, there's someone out there that is working harder than you, that is going to get the opportunity that you deserve if you don't outwork them. And I just carried that into my professional life too, right? There's always going to be another senior account executive out there for a different lender that is probably bringing in more business and has better relationships. So like I have to work that much harder to make sure that I'm standing out as well. So that's another parallel from coming from a competitive sport and a competitive environment into what we're doing here.
And it's just about, it's that like there's certain wisdom that I almost feel like when you hear it, it really is like, some it's like, oh, that's interesting, and some it's like, that is profound, like that is deeply true, and there's no denying it. I think one of those is like, do not rest on your laurels. Like yep. The minute you start doing that, you're not staying still, you're sliding backwards, whether you recognize it or not. And I definitely, I mean, it's funny, even one of the an inside look into the like acting training industry that we don't get enough on this podcast, I've always said, is, but I taught acting for like 15 years, like from when I was basically a kid still, like on, and you would see people come, like talent exists, right? Like you would see people come in and just, wow, like it just, your brain was wired in a way where this just clicks. And then you'd have people that didn't have that, but they wanted it so badly. And I think, I'm thinking of one person in particular whose real name I won't use. So I'm trying to think of a name of someone I've never taught. Let's call him Toby. I've never taught a Toby. So Toby. This kid Toby would just work his, like, he could just take criticism. Like he could just take feedback and criticism and make a change. And he didn't see it as like, oh, like poor me. He didn't see it as anything. He could just take that change. And I think that is one of those, like, that is the most useful skill that you could possibly have, or useful attribute, is like, if you're able to literally just get like pushed down into the, going back to soccer, like pushed down into the mud and just pop back up, like smiling, like, all right, learn that.
Yep.
There's nothing you can't. I would bet on that person 100 times out of 100.
I could not agree more. We live in a society, in a world of constant criticism, right? And I was listening to I forget what it was. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the person was talking about just embracing failure, like just understanding that failure is going to happen, like to everyone, right? To countries, to world leaders, to individual people, to companies. Like failure does happen. The difference, though, is how people respond to that failure, and whether or not they just look at it, to your point, like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not good at this, I'm going to go do something else, or just saying, hey, looking at it as an opportunity to learn and get better. And I think that margin right there is truly the difference between, professionals and loving what they do and very successful people, and then just people that aren't that way. You know what I mean? So,
and at very least, that person is never going to be able to say, well, I didn't try hard enough.
exactly.
Like, even if it, like, failure happens, like you said, it's going to happen. But I being knowing in your gut, like, I didn't give it my all, that's worse than, you know what, I gave it everything I had. I really tried, and it didn't happen.
I agree
the chips
with you,
didn't
man.
fall, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you.
So you brought up being being a senior account executive. So you're leaving your small town. What's the road that led you to this industry?
Yeah, it's probably a very unconventional one. So I left my small town. I didn't go too far. I went to college about 2.5 hours north of Pittsburgh, in a town called Erie, PA. Shout out to my Erie people out there. And I went to a college called it was a satellite campus of Penn State called Penn State Barron. And the reason why, going back to the soccer thing, is I knew I wanted to play soccer in college, but I knew I didn't want to go like the D1, D2 route where that became your entire life. I wanted to also have a very good education. Penn State Barron was known for their business school, and I knew I wanted to do something in business. But they also had a very competitive soccer team that like constantly won championships year after year, and I got recruited by that coach. So it was almost like a match made in heaven, right? It wasn't too far from home. I was able to play soccer, also able to focus on my education. The big downfall was it was in Erie, and Erie's weather is terrible, and there's constant snow and freezing rain and things like that. So, but I do love Erie. But anyway, yeah, so I went to college there, spent 4 years. I was a 4-year starter on the soccer team, so I was very successful there. We won championships. We had a very successful, every year was very successful for us, which I was very grateful of. Going back to friends, I developed lifelong friends. My college roommate, the other, people in my class that were on the team as well, they were from different parts of the country. We still stay connected. We still stay in touch. We do like an alumni weekend every year where we all go up and kind of play a alumni game. I'm 32 years old, so I'm a little slower than I was in college, but and it was just a great, and then my coach was absolutely phenomenal, and I still stay in touch, and I consider him like a true mentor, because not only was he a fantastic coach and he set all types of records and things at Penn State, but he's just a great guy, and he really does genuinely care. And so I attribute so much of that to them. So on the business side of things, I got my education. I majored in finance. It was my senior year. Sustained a great GPA, had great grades, really focused on my studies. However, I didn't have a job secured yet, and a lot of my friends and classmates did. So I saw them being like, oh, got the job. Let me just kind of coast through the end of college. And, it was kind of like a weight lifted off their shoulders. And I wanted to get there, but I didn't want to like settle for something that I wasn't interested in, because I had a lot of offers and I could have done stuff that I wasn't really interested in. So I went on Penn State's career website and noticed a job listing in Pittsburgh, which I knew I wanted to kind of move back home and save some money that way. It was in Pittsburgh, and it was an entry-level job, and it was in the mortgage industry, and it was a customer service analyst, or a servicing analyst, I think was the fancy term that they called it. Didn't know anything about mortgages, honestly, at all. I knew what a mortgage was. I knew that you had them on homes, and it was had something to do with money and finance. So that was the connection that I made in my head. Like, sure. Okay, I am doing something in my field. Sounds great. So I kind of checked that box off. And then, coming out of college, any type of money that I was going to make was like awesome, right? Because I'm this poor right. college student that just got by. And then I'm looking at this company saying, hey, I'm going to give you a salary of this, like, come work for us. And I'm like, this sounds awesome. This is awesome.
You're going to pay me a whole $1,000 and I get a sandwich?
Look at how many things I'm going to be able to buy. This is going to be fantastic. So, yeah, so so in the year I graduated, so like the spring semester of early in the spring semester, I got the job. So I was relieved that I had a job. And then I started a week after I graduated college. Like, I didn't have any type of break really or anything. I moved back home and started a week later. And it was into the mortgage industry as a customer service representative, answering phone calls from borrowers who were either had a question about their payment or something of their mortgage account, or very upset because of something. Maybe they got charged a late charge, or given the time of when I entered the industry, it was 2011. So if you remember a few years earlier,
Mm.
2008, 2007, what happened in the housing industry, like not great stuff, right? A lot of people went into foreclosure. A lot of people went into bankruptcy, lost their homes. Well, guess who I was talking to? I was
Right,
talking to
right.
all of those people that were in really bad situations. So I developed a skill very early on that I still have hold with me today, and I think has allowed me to be successful in my current position of just patience, right? You
Mm.
had to be patient. You had to listen to the borrower's issue. You had to be able to like give them an ear, right, to listen to, and then be able to like dissect it and then go help them. So, I very easily could have gotten upset at all these borrowers and kind of yelled back, but I would have gotten fired if I did that, obviously. But yeah, I mean, to me, my time spent within the servicing industry, um, customer service, mortgage industry, honestly is, I think that was my most valuable time spent in my the most lessons that I learned, right? I think that experience there was just astronomical, which carried on throughout my career and really helped me step into the role I am in now, being able to also still solve problems, also still taking phone calls from difficult brokers or difficult scenarios and how to handle that, just at a much different, higher level. So yeah, and so that's how I got into it, right? It's kind of I just kind of fell into it, and I feel like a lot of people in this industry kind of do similarly fall into different positions. You don't go to
Mm.
school, right, to go into the mortgage industry. So I think it is one of those things where you kind of fall into it. But I've never left, right? I started in 2011, and I've stayed in this industry ever since. I consider it like my professional sports league in a way.
Mm.
So going back to the whole soccer example, no, I didn't become a professional soccer player, but I became a professional mortgage person, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, it was quite the start to my career.
I'm struck by this idea of like when you said I really learned patience. I almost think, and maybe it's a little too woo woo what I'm about to say or whatever, but I think that we tend to not like. I almost feel like we tend not to look at things from a philosophical level, but I almost feel like that's what it is, right? So it's not just patience. Like I literally learned how to keep my mouth shut, although that was part of it.
Yeah,
But it's like the act of patience,
yeah,
right? Like
sure,
the
sure.
act of it, because really what you're saying too is you learn some empathy, right?
Yep,
You're
yep,
upset for justifiable reasons. I can't necessarily help you like fix all. I can't fix 2008. I can't fix, right, but right now I can try my best to like hear you, be patient with you, have empathy, and then do what I can to move the ball down the field.
sure,
Again, going back to growing up with soccer, right, is like all I can do is help get that ball down the field a little bit more,
exactly.
and so I think that's a very cool thing. And so how did that lead to, so you're getting yelled at,
A lot,
and
a
you're
lot.
making a lot, you're getting screamed at a lot, um, uh, and then you're sitting there, making some amount of money that you're proud of at the time, and then now you're at Princeton Wholesale. How long have you been here, by the way?
I've been at Princeton Wholesale over probably about 4.5 years now. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so one
And
of the longest tenured people at Princeton Wholesale, which is a story in and of its own. Maybe we'll have time to tell it, hopefully. But yeah, so
of
I've been here
course.
for a while, so I've been able to see a lot.
Yeah, and how did you lead here? I mean, maybe that's a good lead into the story in and of itself. Like
Yeah,
so what led you here?
sure. So I spent about 4.5 years within the customer service department in my first company. That was my first introduction as well to management leadership. So I was able to like grow into a leadership role, and I actually was managing a team of people, other customer service people.
Mm.
A lot of successes and failures there as well because it was completely new to me, which you learn a lot, right, just by doing. So,
Yeah.
but I was able to like grow into that role, and then was successful with that, and then was able to like grow into other roles within the servicing department. And then, so I didn't know everything there was to know about servicing, but I had a lot of exposure to it. So that's the back end of the mortgage, right? That's when the mortgage has already gone through like its manufactured process, and that's the end result. And then you just deal with the customers and things like that. I became very interested in like the actual manufacturing process. So like the actual details of a mortgage, like how does it actually get started? What does it go through? All that stuff. So I didn't really have an opportunity at my first company to step into a role like that. So I got presented an opportunity at a different mortgage company, um, to step into a role within like the manufacturing process. So I actually went from servicing to closing, right? Which is actually kind of the step right before the loan actually gets to servicing. So, and then I was able to just, again, go into kind of like an entry level closing position, and just learn, brand new, didn't know anything about it, and just learn what closing was, and just learn what a CD was, right? And just learn what closing docs and wires were and things like that. So I spent time there, much like my time in servicing. I was able to elevate to a leadership position and actually manage a team. And, but I kind of hit the same ceiling, right? So I knew as much as I really wanted to know or thought I needed to know about closing. So like, let me go into a different opportunity and things like that. So I was able to like kind of bounce around into different operations roles. So from closing, I was in funding for a while. So I was able to like order wires and do all that fun stuff, deal with the money. Again, going back to kind of the finance connection.
Sure.
I spent time in underwriting, right? So I didn't get any designations or anything like that, but I went through a full entire underwriting training for a month. I was able to underwrite a couple loans, which really, again, when I explain what I'm currently doing, has really helped me be successful there. And then I got into processing, right? So I was in processing. So
Wow.
I was able to actually be a processor for a mortgage loan officer. And so now I'm back with dealing with customers. So I had experience there in servicing. So I knew I had to talk to customers and get things from customers and things like that. So I was able to get experience there. So then I got all this experience at my second company. And I was like, listen, I kind of hit the same ceiling, right? I knew as much as I kind of wanted and needed to know. And then an opportunity opened up 4.5 years ago. A gentleman by the name of Rich Wydell, I'm sure a lot of you know him, reached out to us. And he actually tells the story a lot better than I do. But he stepped in as the CEO of Princeton Mortgage. It was only this little small retail shop doing some amount of business out of New Jersey, Eastern PA, wasn't really growing as much. And this guy, if anyone knows Rich, he has very big dreams and aspirations. And again, he's very competitive and wants to be the best and things like that. So the way to get there was to enter different streams of mortgages. So to kind of dumb it down, there's basically two ways you can get a mortgage. You can go the wholesale way, which is what I do. And that's kind of a different channel. Or there's actually three, but two main. Or you can go the retail way, and deal with loan officers and things like that. Princeton only had a retail channel up until 4.5 years ago. The reason why Rich reached out to me and a handful of other guys was to actually start wholesale from scratch, from the ground up. We didn't have any wholesale presence. Rich admits he actually had to look up what wholesale lending was because he just didn't know. So he had to go out and find people that knew what it was and that he trusted to actually build and grow this thing, which is what we did. I mean, we started out of our apartments, out of our houses, off of laptops. That was all we had. And then we had our knowledge and our experience from the past. And Rich trusted us. He said, hey, I don't know anything about this. I'm trusting you guys to go build this and do it correctly. So do what you got to do. And that's exactly what we did. We did what we had to do. We put all the forms in place. We put the systems in place. We had a broker connections. We reached out and we just continued to build this thing and get momentum to a point where fast forward 4.5 years, as a company, we just had our second year in a row funding over $1 billion. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but wholesale was a very, very big part of that. So it's really wholesome and very fulfilling to look back at my journey, just specifically here at Princeton Mortgage, Princeton Wholesale, and just seeing how far we've come. Like it's truly been fantastic. It's been absolutely incredible. It hasn't always been easy, hasn't always been fun. But that's all part of the journey, you know what I mean? And I've embraced that, and I've embraced the tough times, and I've embraced, the good times and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, and then just kind of backtracking a little bit. So we started wholesale, and then as a company, as a whole company, we said, okay, well, let's continue to grow these channels. At the same time, retail needed some type of leadership and processing at the time. So this was about 2.5 years, 3 years ago. Well, guess what? I had processing experience, right? So I was a processing manager. So I was like, sure, let's do it, right? So I left wholesale, went over to retail and focused on processing and trying to build that out and trying to manage that. Spent about, like I said, 2.5 years there. But guess what? My heart was always in wholesale, right? It was always in wholesale. It never left. So I found myself kind of questioning like, okay, what do I want to do next? So I still want to keep going this processing route. I don't really love processing. I don't really think I'm great at being a processing manager. So I probably shouldn't go that route. Let me get back into wholesale. So the opportunity that opened up in wholesale was starting at the ground level, January of 2020, just being a just being an account executive. And that was it, right? Coming over with zero pipeline, right? Zero loans in my pipeline. We had broker relationships, but I didn't personally have any broker relationships. And starting again at ground zero and just being like, all right, Josh, well, now you're in a sales role, you're an account executive, you're going all in on yourself. You think you're pretty good. Let's actually find out really how good are you. All right, let's see how much of your experience in the past can help you be successful in this role. So that's what I did. I pretty much jumped in the deep end, went from a salary position as a processing manager, a nice salary position, into commission only, right? Betting on myself. And timing helped obviously with 2020 and around March and April, right? The rates fell off a cliff and went completely down, which really helped with business and things like that. But I think things happen for a reason, right? So I think at that moment when I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do next? The stars kind of aligned and something pushed me and said, Josh, you got to get back into wholesale. You got to get back into being an account executive. Things will be great for you. You just got to bet on yourself. And that's what I did.
First of all, what a crazy story and so much to dive into. I mean, I think the first thing that I'm struck by, just being completely honest with you, completely candid with you, candor is a big part of this company.
Most candid, the better.
What a lucky day when Rich found you.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a person, if I could compliment you for a second, that it is rare, I would say at this point, Josh, for someone to build their way up in an industry the way you did. Like, I'm going to learn everything about this. I'm going to learn everything about this. I'm going to learn everything about this. Like, and to not feel complacent or feel comfortable or feel like, well, I think that's an inspiring thing. I really honestly do. And I think there's a grit to that. I think grit is the word. There's a grit to that.
Yeah, I very well, quite honestly, could be at the first company, being in a great position, making a ton of money, and that's it. Like, I very well could have stayed there. It was a great company. They would have taken care of me, and I know that. But you're right. I kind of hit my ceiling, and I kind of got bored in a way, right? I didn't feel like I was pushing myself enough, or the company was actually pushing me, and I didn't want to let that. I just didn't want to look up 10 years from now and be like, well, I'm stuck at the same company, didn't really push myself. I wonder what if I would have done this. So, and you're right, it does take a lot of risk, and it does take grit, because like I said, it wasn't each transition from like position to position or to leadership or to a different company. There were a lot of rocky times. Like, it's not easy, and it's not just in this industry. It's anytime someone's switching jobs or kind of taking a risk, it's going to get rocky. But I think what really separates people is the willingness to have that grit and just stick with it and just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep trusting themselves. And that's what I had to do. I mean, more recently in my account executive role, the first 3 and 4 months were absolutely miserable for me. Like, because I didn't have a pipeline, right? Didn't have really anything to go off of. But like, that's how I got paid. That's how I was paying my bills. I had to get loans, right? I had to make broker relationships because I was commission only. I was looked upon from the company to do that, to help sustain the company. So it was tough, right? First 3 and 4 months were really, really brutal for me. But again, I just kept sticking with it. I kept making the phone calls. I kept writing the handwritten notes. I kept doing everything that I thought that I should be doing. And sure, times are good, times are bad. It was kind of up and down, but I always kind of stuck with it. And I think, going back to, the example of having patience and things like that, like all of that played into it. Like, I very well could have thrown my hands up, been like, well, no, it's been 3 months in, this isn't for me. Let me go back to my salary position and call it a day. But I didn't do that, because I knew that at the end of the day, that wasn't the right move for me. So it took a lot of grit. Absolutely.
And it's not everyone that's built for that. And I won't even put I think oftentimes in these types of stories and conversations, there's a little bit of, there's that like toxic side of it where it's like, if you're not willing to bet on yourself, it's like, some people are happy with where they are and good. That's awesome.
Exactly.
But I think it's the people that feel uncomfortable, right? That get that itch.
Sure.
Are the ones that help build big things, whatever that might be, build things that last. And I think it's such a cool story. We, even with this podcast, we try not to, I don't get into the whole like Princeton side of it as much. Sure. We're clear that we're a Princeton mortgage podcast, but we're trying to be a little bit more like, just let's talk to people and have a conversation. But I think one of the things for me that spoke to me about Princeton was sort of the effects of all the hard work you put in, and the people, Rich and Courtney and Mark and all the people at the beginning, put in, to just make it a place where it's like, come in, build something, you can kind of take control of your destiny. And
Absolutely.
I think that it really is an amazing thing. Like, who knows how long, hopefully that spark will last for a long time. But when a company or a business or a group, an organization, whatever it is, has that kind of that spark, it's a very like unique thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, since our first conversation, when Rich originally reached out and we had our first, he laid the groundwork for the culture that he wanted Princeton to grow into. And it was something that I was completely, not aware of. The companies that I came from had their own cultures, but it was more of like a corporate culture, right? There was no talk of radical transparency or being candid with one another or any of the stuff that we've built our entire culture on. There was really little to no talk of that at these other companies. So when I'm hearing this from this guy and he's believing in us, he's believing in me, and he wants me to come into this, and then he's also talking about the culture and things like that. And then 4.5 years later, looking back and seeing what we built, like there is a sense of pride there, right? We who have been a part of the journey with me have put in a lot of hard work and a lot of time, effort, sweat, blood, tears to get Princeton right to this point. So like we do have a lot of pride. We do feel like people are relying on us. And that does bring that sense of like responsibility, right? We talk about freedom and responsibility. Specifically within my role, that's all it is. Like I'm an accountant. I have my book of business. I run my business as best as I can as being like the CEO of my own life, which is kind of another mantra that we share here. But like, I do feel like a lot of people do rely on me to constantly show up every single day and give everything that I have, because I have way too much invested in this, right? I care way too much to just kind of sit back, relax, and just let things happen. So I'm going to try and control it as much as I can. And like you said, man, it says a lot about what we've been able to build and grow over such a short period of time. 4.5 years, when you look at it as a whole with these other mortgage lenders that have been around for decades, like it's not that long of a time. So that gives me a lot of, I get really excited to see what the next 4.5, 5, 10, 15 years are going to look like, because we've accomplished so much in such a short time.
Without a doubt. And you said something there that jumped out at me, which is, we're really focused a lot on the different, amateur versus pro, the difference between pros and amateurs, and there's a great blog on it that or article on it I'll share in the description. But one of those, like, 25 differences is like pros show up,
Sure.
and you said people are counting on you to show up, and you just gotta bring it. You gotta try, right? It's not, no one's expecting you to hit home runs every time you're at bat, but it better feel like you want to, like,
Exactly, man.
it
Yeah,
better feel like
100%.
you're trying,
Yeah, and like you have to be in a position and working for a company and be in a situation that you actually want to be in too, right? That's the first step, because if you can try all you want, but if you just don't want to be in this position or this scenario, then it's gonna be all for naught. So like, I have purposely put myself in situations and in a position where like I feel like, first of all, I want to be doing this work, right? I want to be an account. I want to develop these relationships with these brokers. Like I truly do love that. So that just rubs off on everyone else too. So when people see that you're putting yourself purposely in these scenarios, and then you actually care and you show up every single day, going back to like the leadership side of it, people are going to look at that and say, well, Josh has been there for 4.5 years, right? He truly cares. Look at the successes that he has had. I'm going to try a little bit extra harder today, right? And that's just my goal. It's to help people, and I'm not a manager here or anything like that, but just naturally being a leader, my goal is it's to help people in any way I possibly can. You know what I mean? Whether it's wholesale related, retail related, recruiting related, doesn't matter. Like if I can deliver value in any area, that's when I feel most fulfilled. So.
That's awesome. And the last thing I'll say too, and then, you've been so gracious with your time. I'd love to have you back on though, because I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours.
I would love to be back on. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I do think that there's anyone that's been in business. has had to get their own business. I'm sure salespeople feel this a lot. Like it's not just wishful thinking to say that when you do things, action, whatever it may be, leads to success.
Yeah.
And it leads to it in a way that can feel very, I said my background was in the arts, but I started a social media agency and kind of built that myself and like didn't know anything about it.
Sure.
Had some great mentors to help me out and before coming to Princeton. And I think there would be days where like I was like, I don't know, like my pipeline seems to be drying up, and I would just be like, I'd get this moment of like, I'm gonna start calling people. I'm just gonna do like I'm just gonna send an email. I'm gonna read, hey buddy, how you been? I haven't talked to you forever. Just anything. I'm just gonna reach out and send out and put out into the universe whatever I can, and it always led to like a new client, or it always led to a conversation that led to a thing that like it always led to something positive. And I'm sure there are people with experiences different than that, and they would hear that and like roll their eyes hard, right? But I do think that more times than not, if you put out positive, if you just start going, momentum follows that.
Sure, absolutely, man. The hardest part is actually doing it, no matter what you're doing. In your instance, you started your own social media company. So many people out there on other podcasts, social media, all this stuff, they always talk about doing that stuff, right? They always dream, oh, that'd be awesome to do that. That'd be great. But so many people don't do it, right? And why is that? Because that's the hardest part, to actually just do it. Because, it's not about figuring out how to do it. It's just about doing it. Like, to your point, like, I was never an account executive before. So I didn't know, like, that, there's all these, like, selling techniques and all this stuff. I've never been a part of that. But like I just did it, right? I just was like, all right, let's bet on myself and just do it, and then we'll figure it out down the line. And I have, right? And I think that's the hardest. So many people I talk to, other account executives and people who are interviewing and things like that, like I see so much potential in them, and it's like I want it so much more than they do for them, because I know that all they have to do is just do it, just apply themselves, just get out there, do the actions. Because you're absolutely right, Dan. Just doing it yields results if you're just consistent with it and you stay true to it. But I think, again, that's just what separates so many people. And we're talking about amateur and professional. That's a big point, right? Professionals just get out there and actually do it. They don't always do it right. They fail a bunch of times, but they're actually doing something. They're making moves. They're doing stuff. And more often than not, that definitely yields to success.
And I always like to end, and I think we actually just hit it. So I'll package it together. Like I like to end with some type of advice to people just entering the business world or re-entering the business world. A lot of people, especially with the last couple of years, you might take a step back, maybe because of financial service issues, you have to come back. Maybe you're coming out of maternity leave or paternity leave, you're coming back. I think the advice that I would give, and that I hear you giving, is there's 1,000 reasons to not do something. There's always going to be, there's a great book, if you haven't read it, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. He talks about the resistance. Right. He talks about, he like personifies it like it's like the resistance. The resistance is simply a great example of resistance would be, I'm going to try to start this thing, but I got to do like I got to really learn it first. And look, I'm not, obviously you need to learn it, but what I mean is, it's like going, all right, we're gonna start a band. You want to start a band? Yeah, let's start a band. Okay, let's spend the next couple of weeks really trying to figure out what the name is.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example. Like,
it's like, no. Why don't we just play music? Yeah. Let's go play music together and we'll figure it out. So I think that like that's a bit of advice I'm hearing from you is like show up, just like do it. Garner that momentum by doing, and if you feel the calling, maybe don't be afraid to bet on yourself and try something.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. It's to me, a lot of it is about self-awareness. It really is. And it's so like, to me, it's actually about 4 main things. Self-awareness. So like being honest and real with yourself. Like you can put on a face, you can like act a certain way, but deep down inside, you know who you are, and just be honest with yourself. Just be self-aware. The next is empathy, right? Empathy is tough. Like you have to be able to show empathy to other people, right? Because if you're not showing empathy, you're not developing that relationship. You're not putting yourselves on the same playing field and things like that. So like show empathy, having gratitude, like letting people know when you appreciate them. It doesn't have to be like a long email. You don't have to send them a gift. It's a quick little call. Hey, just want to let you know I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for helping me. Like, believe it or not, that minute phone call goes such a long way. And then the last thing is patience. Man, we talk about patience a lot here.
Yeah.
Just be very patient. Embrace failure, right? You're going to fail. Just know that going into it, it's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. You will fail. Just be patient with yourself. Stay true to yourself. Just keep pushing forward. And believe me, I am a prime example that great things can happen to you if you just stick to those 4 things.
Couldn't end the episode better than with that. Josh, you're from the minute I've joined the company, nicest guy, one of the nicest guys I've met. Just very free and open with your time, very generous. So I appreciate you. Where can brokers, if a broker, hopefully many brokers are listening to this, if a broker wants to find you, where can they find you?
I am everywhere. No, I'm just kidding. First of all, Dan, thank you. I really appreciate the time. I know this is a lot of work and just taking the time to talk to me and everyone else. So I'm really grateful for that. Where can you find me? Teti at PrincetonWholesale.com is my email. I'll put it out there. My number, 412-580-3933. Please call me. I would love to talk to you. I'd love to create that connection. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all that stuff. Even if you're not looking to sign up with another lender, I just love meeting people within this industry and talking to them like this. So I would love to chat with you.
That's awesome. And then if you have a question about literally any, whether it be underwriting or process, I mean, this guy is like a Swiss Army knife of knowledge. So
that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a great one.
Dan, appreciate it, brother. See you, man.